Hello, this is Chris Cohen with another chess endgame lesson. Today we're going to look at king and rook versus king, and we're going to look at one method for winning with king and rook versus king called the box method. Here with the rook on the board, if we draw lines to the edge of the board in both directions, these lines define a box. Black's king cannot move to any of the squares controlled by white's rook, and so black's king is inside the box defined by those arrows. The box method is simple and effective. It isn't the fastest way to checkmate with a king or a rook, but it's especially useful in time pressure when there's not much time or room to make a mistake. First step of the box method is to ask the question, can we move the rook to make the box smaller? And here we can move the rook to this square. The box is now smaller, and black's king is confined within these 16 squares. Black to move wants to stay as close to the center of the board as possible, so that this move, black's king would only be 2 squares away from the edge of the board in both directions. If he moves here, at least he's 3 squares away from this edge of the board. Once again, we ask, can we move the rook here to make the box smaller? And we can. Black's king, for example, could go here, and on this move we can't make the box smaller. Black will simply capture the rook. If we can't make the box smaller, then we want to move our king closer to black's king. Again, black will try to stay as far away from the edge of the board as possible. Here is the box, and we don't have a rook move to make it smaller. For example, if we go here, black's king is no longer inside the box and can move to either side. Since we can't make the box smaller, we want to move our king closer. If black goes here, we can make the box smaller. And if black goes here, we can move our king closer. With his choice of squares, black wants to stay away from the edge of the board. We can make the box smaller. Again, black's king wants to stay away from the edge of the board as much as possible. And in this position, we can't move the rook to make the box smaller. Moving it here would make it bigger. We can't move the king any closer, and in this case, we simply keep our rook protected. And now if black goes here, we'll make the box smaller. If he goes here, then we'll move our king closer. Our goal is to drive the king to the edge of the board so we can deliver mate. With king and rook versus king, black's king has to be on the edge of the board in order for white to deliver mate. And now black's king must move to the edge of the board. Here we'll make the box smaller. And here we'll move our king closer. Black only has one move. And in order to mate black's king at the edge of the board, we need to control the squares in front of black's king by using our king. White's king now cuts up black's king to the edge of the board, and this allows this checkmate. Going back further, and as an example, if black's king is on the edge of the board but not in the corner, then white's king, to cut off black's king, needs to be in the opposition, on the same line and 1 square apart. White's king controls these squares. Black's rook no longer needs to, but can move to the edge of the board and deliver checkmate. Let's take another look and go through it quickly. Can we make the box smaller? Yes. Black's king wants to stay as close to the center of the board as possible. We can't make the box smaller, so we'll move our king closer. Here we can make the box smaller. and here. If we reach this position where we can't move our rook to make the box smaller, and our king can't get closer to black's king, then we'll just keep the rook protected and continue with our procedure on the next moves. Or here. Driving the king to the edge of the board. Or into the corner where we can deliver checkmate. This concludes our endgame lesson, King and Rook versus King, showing the box method.